good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We appreciate you coming in. I know that this time of year can get really hectic and busy, and we're just so appreciative to see this type of turnout to have our housing forum. And we're here today to talk about the Collier County Community Land Trust, what some of the things that we've accomplished this year and some of our plans for the future. Just first, before we get started, I want to give a big thank you to NABOR, the Naples Area Board of Realtors, for hosting this event for us. Yes. Danielle and PJ especially, shout outs for helping us get this coordinated. It's just, it's great to have this type of venue to be able to hold a meeting and a forum. I hope that this information isn't too repetitive. Some of you may have participated in when we had a Zoom presentation last year. And how exciting is it that we're able to get together this year? I mean, I think this is the first group setting meeting that I've been able to be a part of for a while, so very appreciative of that. We're going to do a very quick background history of the Collier County Community Land Trust, and hopefully that provides some context to how we got here. It goes all the way back to 2017. In October, when we had the Urban Land Institute visit Collier County and really did an in-depth analysis of some of the needs within the community. And as you can probably imagine, housing affordability kind of bubbled up to the surface. And that was 5 years ago. We've had a number of things transpire, obviously, starting with COVID, then into Ian, that have just made things really accelerate the need for more housing affordability within the community across the entire income spectrum. But dating back to that Urban Land Institute analysis that they created, one of 35 recommendations that they put forward to the county was you should maybe look into starting a community land trust. So we were interested in that topic, and again, I want to make a note, changes to the market conditions since that time, it's really accelerated the demand for additional housing that is affordable within our community. And then so fast forward, in a timeline, April of 2019, county staff worked diligently to go through all of those recommendations, and the land trust initiative came out as a request for proposals in April of 2019. So it might be important to define what a community land trust is if you're not familiar with the term. And some people might assume it's just land acquisition, but that is not the case. They're private, nonprofit, county, community-based organizations designed to ensure stewardship of land. The land becomes kind of the vehicle by which we control development. Land trusts can be used for various types of development, which a lot of people may not know. It can do commercial, but they're primarily used to ensure long-term housing affordability. And the trust, the main objective is to acquire land and maintain the ownership of it, and then enter into long-term renewable ground leases, typically 99 years renewable, with either a homeowner that's going to acquire a property as an alternative to renting, or can also be used for affordable rental. We're going to talk about a couple of exciting projects that we've been working on. And you have the capability to, if you have land, to ground lease that then to a developer to build permanent affordable housing. But even if you have a developer that has the land already under control and they are working on a long-term affordable project, you can act as a co-developer in that type of multifamily or single-family housing development. So a lot of capabilities. We want to stress that home ownership through the land trust model, where there is permanent affordability because the land will remain controlled by the trust, and there's long-term ground lease, but there's a resale value, a resale formula that we've adopted that retains the affordability for future buyers. That's a model we're very aggressively pursuing for this upcoming year. So you're going to hear a lot about rental today, but know that home ownership is definitely on the radar as well. So again, back to our timeline, October of 2019, the Housing Development Corporation of Southwest Florida, Inc., doing business as HELP, was awarded the contract to establish community land trust. So my other life is directing the HELP, which is the only HUD-approved local housing counseling agency, and it provides education and counseling for individuals seeking financial literacy, home buyer education, pre-purchase counseling, mortgage default resolution counseling, and we've been recently working with eviction and diversion. So that has more of that consumer service type of side to it. And so the organization with that kind of background, it felt like a good fit to help launch the land trust. And so I went out and recruited a board of directors in January of 2020. The articles of incorporation were filed, and then March is when we sat our initial volunteer board. And we're going to get to introduce the ones that are in attendance in just a little bit. And then November was when the IRS recognized the Collier County Community Land Trust as a tax-exempt 501c3 organization. The paperwork was filed in February, so you can see it's a bit of a lengthy process in order to become a tax-exempt organization in the eyes of the IRS. So definitely something that takes a little bit of time. We would not have been able to accomplish the formation without a couple of very valuable partners. We entered into a pro bono agreement with Legal Aid Services of Collier County, and they have their main offices out of Broward, actually, and they've had facilitated and assisted a couple of land trusts in the Broward and Miami-Dade area. So we were fortunate to be assigned an attorney by the name of Wendy Wilson. I don't think that she was able to make it, but she was just so instrumental in helping us with our legal formation documents, and she's also been a valuable part of reviewing closing documents on the rental projects we're going to talk about in just a little bit. We also received significant guidance from the Florida Housing Coalition. Florida is a state that is very devoted to the community land trust model. Sorry, this is getting a little feedback.
Stay out of that area. Yeah.
Right here? Stop pacing is what you're trying to tell me. All right.
This way, Michael.
I'm always moving. So the Florida Housing Coalition started a unique model, which is the Florida Community Land Trust Institute. They have a dedicated institute that's focused just on formation and review of community land trusts. And through that organization, they partnered with Freddie Mac to create a certification program for land trusts. And I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit and what the value is, because we were blessed. Because we had no bad habits, it was pretty easy for us to get started from day one with our structuring our documents and the best practices the way that the Land Trust Institute felt was most appropriate, and got that great guidance. We were assigned 2 individuals from the coalition, and I met with them on a very regular basis, almost monthly, to kind of work through some of the formation documents and our governance and our organizational structure. So great shout outs to those 2 organizations. And now, stay in my spot. Introduction to the board. I mentioned that we had an initial board, and we've had 1 member join since the initial formation. So Stephen Ruby's up front here with me, our board president. Mary Jo Deagle is the board vice president. Todd Sabin, our treasurer, unfortunately was going to be here, but he was sick today. So he had to text and let us know that he didn't want to come and share that with anybody. So Jenna Bazaka Forster's our board secretary. We have Michelle McLeod here as the director. I know a lot of you know her and the great work she's done in the community. And then David Ellis also had an emergency work meeting that he got called into today, so we forgave him for that. We do say that work needs to come before what I consider play, because we're having a great time today. So back to that certification program through the Florida Community Land Trust Institute, again partnered with Freddie Mac, and it's an interesting program because it's a pilot. It's the first of its kind in the country. And what Freddie Mac wanted to do was to, again, lay a formation for best practices. And a main component of their documentation set is their ground lease rider. They have a Freddie Mac ground lease rider. And for those in the banking community in the room, you know that if you're trying to finance a buyer of a property and they don't own the land under that property, it's maybe a little tricky. You can see there might be some conflicts there. So Freddie Mac said, well, we want to create a secondary market to reduce that risk for our banking partners. So they're going to be willing to go out and lend to those buyers who are going to be purchasing affordably permanently through the land trust model. So they wrote a ground lease rider, and if we were willing to accept that and a few other things that they thought of as best practices, including a review of our resale formula and our ground lease, then you're able to obtain the certification, and now a certified land trust is going to be viewed as an entity that has low risk, and again, banking partners should be very willing to step forward and provide lending for our buyers in the future. So we're excited to have obtained that in April of 2021, one of the first 6 land trusts in the state, and they're continuing this every year to add new land trusts through this model, and eventually I think it's going to be rolled out nationwide, but Florida got to be the test pilot area for it. So again, I talked about coalition staff was very instrumental in us getting our formation documents together. And there's a copy of the certification. It's on our website as well if anybody's interested in taking a look at it. And so I'm really flying through this, which is good. We're going to have a lot of time for Q&A and announcements at the end, and hopefully we'll be able to have a little bit more discourse and dialogue. But we want to now switch gears and talk about our first project, which we're very excited about, and it's called Allegro at Hacienda Lakes. It is a senior affordable rental development project, and we're going to have in a little bit Nick from McDowell Housing Partners. They were the developer on this, and they were seeking a nonprofit general partner to enter into this deal to secure some of the financing. This is financed with a multitude of different sources, 4 of which come from Florida Housing Finance Corporation, our state housing finance agency. This is a 4% low-income housing tax credit deal. It uses multifamily tax-exempt bonds, the SAIL program, which is our state apartment incentive loan program, and then there's even some ELI funds in there. So I know this because every one of those sources has a document package that has to be reviewed and signed. And just to give you some context, there is a lot that goes into putting a deal like this together, and it's not for the faint of heart, and it requires an accomplished developer who has this as their niche business. They want to be in the affordable space. So we felt honored that McDowell was willing to partner with us on this. And the development itself, it's a senior independent living. So it's not assisted living, but it's a 62 plus community. So there is a 62 age limit, have to be 62 and older to live. The first phase, there's 2 phases to it and they're mirror images. So Allegro is going to be the first one to complete. It's 160 dwelling units in phase 1. These are ideally located, just to give you some idea of the area, it's east of 951 Collier Boulevard on Rattlesnake Hammock is where the Hacienda Lakes Community Development District is located. I'm going to show you in a little bit. These are well underway, and in fact, we have a rendering in the back and also the progress photos to show you where we're at with the development. But again, ideally located near medical, we have the Publix right next door, so there's pharmacies, groceries, parks, and open space. This is not far at all from Paradise Coast Sports Park, which we're very proud of in the community. So it's a well-located development. And as far as how the rent and income caps work, I know if you come to enough of these, you're always hearing about area median income, AMI percentages. I'm actually going to, in a little bit, show you some context on that. I have the chart for 2022, so I don't want to bore you, but we at least will add both some figures as far as what type of income are we talking about, but then also what does that equate to in terms of rent. But the way this development is structured, everybody is 60% or less of area median income. There's a 10% set aside for what we call our extremely low income population, which is making no more than 30% of area median income. And there's also some special needs categories involved as well. So we're going to do everything we can to really hit as many highly needing community members to be able to live in the project. 50-year land use restriction agreement on this, which results in the long-term affordability. The developer in this case already had control of the land. We came into it a little ways down the road. So this isn't a project where we bought the land and brought in a developer, but they brought us in as a general partner in the agreement. But it still has that 50-year land use restriction agreement, which creates very long-term affordability. So official closing took place January of 2022. We're very excited to get all the paperwork finished on it. And then in March of 2022, we had a groundbreaking ceremony on site. And we actually were honored to have some media coverage, and Fox 4 News came out and interviewed our esteemed board president. So I'm going to click off here. I think that video is next. Yes.
Leaders in Collier County are taking steps to provide more affordable housing in that area. Developer McDowell Housing Partners broke ground on 3 affordable housing units. These are in East Naples. Now, 2 will contain more than 300 apartments. They're for people over 62 who make $50,000 or less. Now, there's a third development. It's workforce housing for anyone. That's for households making $118,000 or less. Now, the president of the Collier County Community Land Trust says the issue affects everyone because it results in a shortage of workers.
We're losing a lot of our workforce out of the community because they can't afford to live here. And the way gas prices are going now, they're not going to be able to afford to commute into the community, so they're going to find jobs closer to where they're now living, and we're going to be short on our work staff.
Now, these 3 developments are the first of 11 affordable housing projects that are planned to open up in Collier County within the next 10 years. However, they are the first such developments in the county since 2005. McDowell Housing expects that some of the workforce housing apartments are going to be ready for renters in about 10 months.
But before I jump into I mentioned the chart here to be able to provide some income context. There are a couple of things in there. I want to say that the one piece of information the reporter mentioned, and I think they were talking about the Harmony project, and I'm hopeful that Nick's going to say a little bit more about that. It's not something we're a part of, but it is a non-age restricted partnership that is taking place with Collier County, who actually owned a parcel of land right by Colusa Elementary School. But they mentioned it was for everybody and up to 118,000. I don't know that that was necessarily accurate information, because that is also a tax credit project that has a little bit higher income limit. That one uses averaging, correct? So there's some units available for individuals up to 80% of area median income. But all of the income levels have to average out for everybody who's going to live in those 82 units to be no more than 60%. So you can add a few more lower income, a few more up to 80, but make sure your average hits to 60. So that's a relatively new thing that they started with in the last couple of years, I believe. So look at me with all my knowledge. So here's the 22 HUD income limits. And these are posted by, again, Florida Housing Finance Corporation. This is for Collier County. I've just extrapolated out our area, the Naples, Immokalee, Marco Island MSA. That median income figure of $98,600, that is the figure for 2022 for a 4-person household. So that's, and the one thing that is, we always find is kind of interesting, but they're the numbers that we're given, but that $98,600, our area median income, it includes all income, passive income, work income. So if we're looking at households that are truly just working, we're probably closer to $60,000 as the average income for a working household. But because we have a number of individuals that have fairly high earnings from passive income, it brings our area median income up to $98,600. That can be a blessing or a curse. It does allow some higher rent limits, which makes things pencil a little bit easier if you're trying to come into it from the developer side, but it also makes even those income restricted units unattainable for certain individuals who are still in the workforce. So there's, it can be a double-edged sword. But the categories that are most used are along the left side. That percentage category are below 30% and below is considered extremely low income. 30 to 50% is very low income. The 50 to 80 is considered the low income category. 80 to 120 is what we call moderate income, and then 120 to 140 is identified as our gap income. And you can see the correlating incomes. They're based on household size. So this chart is readily available. I'm happy to share it with anybody so you can always see when we're talking about what does that mean for income level for somebody at a certain percentage. It's all kind of laid out in this chart. It's not something that's just made up. It is posted every single year, and it does adjust. And it adjusted quite sharply. I believe in 2021 that area median income for a 4-person household was $84,300. So we're looking at a over $14,000 increase from 21 to 22. So it does ebb and flow. The next slide, now I mentioned that we can also, what does that mean for rent caps? I've brought out here what the product mix will be in the Allegro, what we believe is. I think these are kind of final. Nick can correct me if I'm wrong. But out of the 160 units, again, 10% approximately will be designated for extremely low income. And what that relates to is at a 1-person apartment, approximately 11 units, based on the 2022 low-income housing tax credit HUD rent caps, we'd be looking at a cap of $531 per month for a brand new 1-bedroom, 1-bath unit for a fixed income senior if you're earning less than 30% of AMI. Then an additional 80 units up to 60% of AMI, that cap would equate to around $1,062 per month. And then the 2-bedroom units, 8 units at the 30% AMI cap of $637 per month, and then $1,273 based on the 2022 figures for the 2-bedroom units up to 60% of AMI. So as you can see, those numbers, anybody who's following the market, that is well below our market rents. So this is the type of, now again, people have to income qualify. It isn't going to be for everybody, but those households who are truly below those income thresholds, we just don't have the units available right now. So we're excited to be able to bring this particular project online and its sister phase, Cadenza, hopefully a year later. The one thing that was mentioned also in the video clip from Fox 4, that she made the comment that there hadn't been any affordable development since 2005 in Naples. Just to give context of what does that mean. You can go through the University of Florida Schimberg Institute, post the site, and it lets you know what type of rental communities have had subsidy, federal state subsidy that creates long-term affordability. And you can track that by region. So when you look into the Naples market, there have been a few, I believe, in Immokalee since that date. But in the Naples market, the last one that we could find was 2005. So by the time this Harmony and Allegro come online, we're looking at an 18-year gap in developments. And so when you're talking, a lot of those also may have only had 30 years of affordability. So there may be a number of those projects that we're going to phase out of their affordability. We need to add more units. I think that's the talking point. Smart has to be smart and responsible growth and development, but that's just too long of a gap to not have units that are really designated for affordability. So we've got some pretty pictures. This rendering picture on the left side is also in the back on the poster board. And Nick just told me it's going to look really substantially like that. So as you can see, if you were to drive up to this community, unless you knew, you wouldn't know. This is going to look just like your typical market rate development. We're very impressed so far with the work that McDowell has done. He might even hit on some of the other communities and projects that they've worked with. But I think this is going to be a great addition to our community. And here's some of the actual progress photos. And again, there's a rendering or a poster board in the back with a photo. But we're excited to see windows. Things are really coming along. And based on our estimates, we believe probably late summer occupancy, late summer 2023 occupancy. So I'll maybe let Nick touch on that a little bit more. So what role will the Collier County Community Land Trust play in this type of development? First and foremost, I mentioned we're serving as the nonprofit general partner, so a lot of documents to sign first. But we'll also act as the local project representative and liaison. So if there's questions, we're happy to take some of those questions on. If I don't know the answer, I'm certainly going to find it. Providing market research and tenant outreach. Tenant outreach hasn't been that big of a challenge. The tenants are reaching out to us. There is a need. We're starting to phase out of having rental assistance programs, and the rents are not coming down. So we know that the demand is there, but we'll be happy to try to answer questions from the community if they have them regarding when the project will be available. Assisting the management company with identifying and implementing tenant services and programs. And one thing that we're really excited about, we've had conversations with Collier County as an example of bringing their senior feeding program into the community room at Allegro as soon as it's open. That has been over, I believe, in the Golden Gate city, the Golden Gate.
We're moving the East Naples one.
You're moving to East Naples. I don't want to give bad information, so.
East Naples will close. That's a small site and move over here.
Okay, so I stand corrected. East Naples will actually close, but this will be a new site for a senior feeding program provided by Collier County. And obviously you can see how that would fit in nicely. You've got a captive audience of low-income seniors already on site. They don't have to leave to go out and find this food resource, and other individuals can come in. So the community room, we had early conversations to make sure that it was going to meet all of the requirements of the program. And so that's just a partnership that we were very happy to be able to make. And then the last thing is assisting with identifying and income qualifying potential tenants. So there will be a very experienced property management company, I believe it's Weller Management, who has worked in this arena, and they'll be managing the income certification annually. And that's something that the community needs to know too. I mean, yeah, it's affordable. How do we know that the individuals living there are actually qualified? This is restricted and monitored heavily by Florida Housing Finance Corporation, so the property manager will definitely be requesting and requiring income certification. Yes?
So you qualify, you get in, you're renting, and for whatever reason your income goes up, you get kicked out?
I believe, I think that in a lot of cases you've got up to 11 months potentially.
You're given up to 11 months to adjust, but there are certain properties that allow you to go up to 80%
Here,
of
you
the
can-
area median. I'm sorry.
If you tap that, you can actually talk.
There are certain properties that'll allow you to go up to 80, 70, 80% of the area median income. So I guess it depends on the project that you're living in. If you anticipate that your rents are increasing, I would focus more on properties that allow you to go up to that certain AMI percentage. But unless they don't have that, you only have 11 months to move out.
Yeah, you do need to relocate. I mean, it's to keep the integrity of the program, because if you get people in and all of a sudden everybody's income goes up, then now you no longer have an affordable development. So, but at least it's an 11-month. It's not an immediate, you don't qualify anymore, pack your bags and go. So there's a little bit of a time allowed through the program. So dealing with the senior population, we would hopefully anticipate that you wouldn't see any massive projected increases in income. But if you're dealing with a workforce space and somebody decides that they end up getting married and have dual income, then you hope that allows them to move into another market, either a market rate unit or home ownership. So our goal, as we're being involved in this too, because of our affiliation with HELP, is to continue to educate and give people opportunities to move from rental into the home ownership space. So if we're working with workforce, that's, again, trying to bring services together so that we can create an environment where people can get into the home ownership arena. Yes, John?
The tool that will be used to monitor and manage the incomes for the Is that tool that you took off the shelf or you developed it? Is it something that would be available to other builders who want to do this?
Well, the management companies they work with typically are going to handle the income certification, but as an organization, we quite honestly are looking to create a process to help with income certification for developers who are maybe coming in and guaranteeing a certain percentage of affordability in a community, but they're not going to be working with the various income or financing sources that we're talking about. If they're not going to be monitored by the state or federal government and it's the county's responsibility, we would like to put together a process in case the county would like to participate in that, or if builders. We've had some conversations, so we're in the process of trying to build a model that could do that.
Conversations at the AHAC where there's a very high interest in making sure that if we do these things, that they're all monitored all the time.
Correct.
And it would help to get things approved if the commissioners knew that that tool was out there.
Absolutely. And we would like to be able to step forward and say, here's how this process can work, whether or not anybody wants to collaborate with us on that. But we're very open to that conversation. We do have access to a database tool called Homekeeper that we've signed up for, which gives you the capability of tracking pretty much anything. You know exactly if units are coming online, the individual who's there, what their income is. You can attach the certification documents that you collected for the year. So annually, you've got that right there, and you can build out whatever custom reports you want from that. So the tools are definitely available. It's just a matter of having a process that is approved and everybody recognizes. Yep.
So tools, people, resources, services, what funds that expense?
We're going to get to that, if you don't mind. We'll jump through. Yeah, we're going to definitely, I'll touch on that near the end. So. Well, if we can, let's, we don't have that many more slides left, so we'll kind of get through the actual presentation portion, and we should have ample time to kind of go through some questions. I never mind taking them, but we do want to be able to pass the microphone around so everybody has the benefit of hearing what the question was. So let's get through this. Some future projects. Cadenza at Hacienda Lakes, I mentioned, is the mirror image, and another 160 units of senior affordable housing going to be on that the Hacienda Lakes site. In a bit, Nick's going to come up and talk about Ecos Collier, which is a non-age restricted development that's very much in the introductory and proposal phase. Hopefully people will get excited about it and can maybe lend some support as we start moving forward with that. But we're looking at that as a potential project to maybe tap into the surtax workforce housing trust fund money. Out of our 1% sales tax that was passed in 2018, there was $20 million dedicated to workforce housing trust fund. And so we're hoping to kind of spark some interest in getting an actual request for proposals out by bringing forth a tangible project that people can look at and say, let's figure out what the strengths and weaknesses are and what our requirements are going to be to utilize those funds. Because if we can take the land acquisition cost out of the equation, it's really going to help these developments retain their affordability. We're going to certainly look, as I mentioned earlier, homeownership is a big topic that we want to keep focusing on. So obtaining land for either new housing construction or acquiring existing units that would be sold through the land trust homeownership model. You hate to see something like a hurricane come through, but we do know we've actually had some conversations with areas that were impacted, lower areas that had some older rental homes on that maybe had the flooding, and they might be totaled, and it's going to take a lot of investment in order to bring up the level of the land to meet code. So that might be an opportunity. We're going to certainly keep eyes on that. You might be able to acquire some existing properties as investors maybe just want to sell and not have to do the rehabilitation. Collaborating with our continuum of care, nonprofit and for-profit partners, and also local government to help continue to evolve housing plans. So with that, that's been a lot of talking. I'm going to turn it over to Nick. We'll make sure we've got. Test one. Ooh, you are live, my friend.
Thank you.
Nick Echeverria with McDowell Housing Partners.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Echeverria. I'm here on behalf of McDowell. Very excited to be here. Thank you, the folks at Neighbor, the folks at Collier Community Land Trust. You guys have been a tremendous help with us in getting our projects done. We're very excited of what's coming online and what's to come in the future. So Ecos on Collier is a proposed development that we are working on located at 6360 Collier Boulevard. We're proposing 108 units, family garden style. It's the most efficient product that we're used to developing in these types of areas. Mixed between 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And it is going to be certified through the Green Building Program. Green Building Program is a program that the state incentivizes developers to use to make your products more efficient, energy efficient, and focus on, conservation and not using too much electricity, things like that you can implement into the design of your project. This is a rendering of what we expect the project to look like once we get to the development side. And as Mike mentioned, our projects do come out to look very similar to what these renderings look like. And you would never guess that it looks like, it's an affordable housing project or anything. It very much does look like a market rate product. So as Mike mentioned, the proposed sales tax funding, these types of gap financing that are provided to these developers are extremely helpful. Cadenza, which is the second phase of Allegro that Mike mentioned, I had a very big issue happen right around March when we were getting close to closing, where construction prices just skyrocketed. The cost of transporting concrete and everything. I mean, we had almost a $3 million construction bust. Luckily, Florida Housing was able to save us. They came up with a CHIRP funding program that we applied for. We got through the funding very quickly, and they were able to save us on that construction bust and ultimately closed by August for the second phase. We want to introduce as well the House Bill 1339. I'm not sure if many of you folks have heard about this bill, but it is a bill that has been passed, and it is a tool that is being utilized for certain counties and jurisdictions that have comprehensive plans that don't have a lot of multifamily entitled land. You have a lot of industrial, commercial, a lot of this type of land that you'd be able to use to develop affordable housing and speed the process up. Speed the process up how? There's a comprehensive plan, there's zoning entitlements that are in place that forbid you from being able to develop a multifamily product, right? You don't have the entitlements, you can't build there. It has to be commercial, industrial. This bill allows us to work with jurisdictions to speed up that process, provide a site plan, or use a development agreement between the jurisdiction and the developer where you agree on certain terms and are able to expedite the rezoning process and eventually close and start developing on the land. We have income and rent restrictions. We would like to propose this project as an income average project. I know somebody had asked about, what happens if your income goes up above 60%? This county does have very high rents, and it does allow us to be more flexible. If the county tells us, listen, we need more guys at 70 to 80% AMI, we need people to come into these properties, we can do an income average project, and we have that flexibility. The state has allowed us to do that as long as we maintain the 60% average. And then this is just a slide, I guess.
Yeah, we're back to that. I don't know if that.
I wanted to just
Please,
mention a couple
yeah,
other
you can leave
things.
it up.
So, Allegro and Cadenza, as Mike mentioned, Allegro is supposed to finish construction around May of next year. We'll start lease up pretty much 2 to 3 months prior to that. We'll do the marketing. We start, putting out newspapers, ads, and things like that to market the project. And I do encourage you folks to come see these projects. They're going up extremely fast. We have very well qualified general contractors who keep neighborhood relations. They keep everybody in check, making sure that we're not obstructing anybody's property or making too much noise and things of that nature to keep everybody at peace. So I do highly recommend that you go to see the sites. We're going to have really nice amenities: a pickleball court, a bocce ball court, pool, state-of-the-art fitness center. A lot of things that are going to make these residents enjoy their property, have fun in their property, be able to host events like with the Collier County Community Land Trust, senior feeding programs, things like that, that we want to get the community more involved and show them that what we bring to the table is really a nice product. It makes people happy, and it provides affordable housing, which is more important than anything else. There is a tremendous need in this county. I looked at the market study. I saw absorption rates of 40 units per month. 40 units per month is extremely high. That means you can lease up a property at 160 units, probably less than 3 months. There is an extreme need here. We're here to help. We're here to address this mission. It's very important to us, and we're willing to help you guys in anything that you need to get this process going and move quickly to address the mission. So thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to working with you all on future projects. And I'm here to answer any questions or anything that you may have, within the next couple minutes. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick. Hold on to that. If you want to hang on to that for a second, I've still got I'll set it right over here. Yes, please. Put that back on mute. All right. So last couple of slides for me before I introduce our board president for a few comments. This is a membership organization, the Community Land Trust. So we have a few regular members already signed up, but community land trusts are actually governed by their membership. We will have at a minimum one annual meeting per year, and we will have more regular membership meetings as needed as we continue to grow and have more matters that need to be brought before the entire membership. But general members have the right to participate in those membership meetings, also vote on matters that are brought before the membership, and nominate and participate in board of director elections, serve on committees and on the board of directors. The individual general membership rate was set by our board, very, very reasonable at $50 annually. And if you have a corporate entity and want to have a corporate general membership, that's at $150 per year. So we feel that's very affordable. As far as how individuals can get involved, we certainly mentioned becoming a member. We have I know that a lot of people have stepped forward and said, I want to be a part of this, I want to do something. And I've been remiss, I haven't had the opportunity or the time to necessarily direct people to their most effective use. Where's my spot where I'm not going to... But the board has created a new organizational structure. We have our 5 subcommittees formed. We will be addressing, as we get into 2023, putting individuals with areas of expertise within these areas onto those committees and helping to continue to move this mission forward. So we'll have our finance, strategic development, governance, education, and outreach. A big need is outreach and advocacy within the community, and also then fundraising. So we mentioned, how do we fund this? Certainly we will accept donations as a 501c3 nonprofit, and that can be in the form of cash or land. Kind of unique in the sense that we do like land as a donation. So if you happen to know landowners and there's properties that you would like to have us review to see if it's something that could potentially be a fit for the mission, we're very happy to do that. But as far as overall how the organization obtains funding outside of the philanthropy piece, participating in development certainly is going to create co-developer fees. So that is an opportunity. We'll have our ground leases as long-term opportunity to generate revenue. You don't look at that as a major revenue source, but it does help to at least cover some of the administrative costs. But certainly a big part of what land trusts do is through working with developments and getting co-developer fees. But certainly the community stepping forward and helping with philanthropy, and what Steve's going to talk about in just a little bit is we're trying to create that organization that can help address and solve a lot of these issues. So rather than having multiple groups out trying to figure out how they can put their resources to work, we would really like to try to create some focus for that. And so I think that's a great segue.
I don't think I need this. I'm not.
Yeah, this is it. One slide. You're a one slide guy. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for all sharing the morning with us. I'm very excited about what's going to happen in the future, and I think I've got the fun part of this this morning. A little over 2 years ago, just at the cusp of COVID, we had a Zoom meeting. And the whole purpose of the Zoom meeting was to install a board of directors and elect officers. I had the gun put to my head to become the president, so that's why I'm here. And at the end of that meeting, I said, well, we're a fledgling organization. Nobody knows about us. Nobody hears about us. We're all passionate about this, but I'm not sure how much passion we have in the community for it. I said, maybe in 5 years we'll be able to put something in the ground and do something. I shocked myself. We're 2 years in, and you just saw what we've done and what Michael and Nick have accomplished over the past 2 years. And we couldn't have done this without a very dedicated, passionate board of, I think we have the right expertise on this board, and Michael and his staff. So I want a round of applause for my board and for the staff. So where are we going? I think Michael pointed on a few of these things. I look at partnerships as being key to what we're trying to do here. We want to create and build partnerships and build on those. As Michael just said, we don't want to see this community fragmented with a whole bunch of different organizations, maybe going in cross purposes. We feel that we would like to partner. I keep saying to my board, we'll partner with anybody but the devil. And if he has a good deal, we may do it. So Partnerships are key, and anybody in this room, we'd like to partner. We'll talk to anyone. I've talked to a few people before the meeting, and I said, no, come and talk to us. You have a deal, you have something, you have an initiative you want to bring forward. We're here to work with you. We don't need in control necessarily. We're not being the top. We'll partner with you and help you in any way possible. The other thing is acquisitions. We're going to seize opportunities. We're looking all over the place. Our board members are bringing things to the board, locations, land, properties that possibly would have potential. So we're looking, as Mike said, greenfields, land, individual properties, homes, hotels that may be going to seed that we could convert. Big thing, as Michael mentioned, was affordable housing developments that are going out of the restriction. LIHTC projects that are, after 30 years, they're no longer have restrictions on them, and they could easily become market. So we're looking at those opportunities to continue to preserve housing that may be already there, and also to create more housing. So land, property, we're looking at opportunities for acquisitions in the next year. Housing products, and I think we've already talked about some of the things that we're doing over the next year in multifamily, but also in home ownership. Michael and I have been talking about we need to balance the side. We know that the market is definitely in need of rental, multifamily rental. That's where the greatest need is at the moment. But the home ownership is also an important aspect of what we're doing here. So we're looking for opportunities over the next year to get several, maybe scattered site, not necessarily a large greenfield development, but some scattered site home ownership properties out in the community. Now, repositioning. This is the thing that's making me excited for this coming year. And Michael kind of alluded to it. We want to expand our impact. We're looking at an initiative that will, I shut myself off.
You're good.
Okay, all right. We're looking at an initiative here that will create a much more robust organization with a broader focus, and a focus that will, as I said, try to bring partnerships together and be a nexus for other organizations and individuals and businesses who are passionate about solving this problem, to get together and pull in the same direction. Now, how did this all start? It started about the middle of the summer when Ray Chrisman, and I want to do a caveat here. Ray always says, he discloses that he's coming forward to work on this as Ray Chrisman, the citizen, and not the city councilman. So Ray's in the audience with us today. Ray brought us a one-page paper. He said he wanted to bounce off us. He said, I think what we need here is a new organization to deal with advocacy and philanthropy. And Michael and I said, yeah, we agree. You know, that's a missing point here. We want to be able to convince the community that we need this affordable housing. It's an economic issue, economic development issue, and not a social welfare issue. We want to fight NIMBYism. We want to make people comfortable with making contributions and helping to fund this, both on the government and the business level. So yeah, it's important. And as we had several meetings over coffee, we started to evolve something maybe much more robust. And we said, we've got a lot of assets here. You know, how can we do this? So what came out of that meeting is really a concept to merge. Michael talked about HELP and the CCCLT, which you're here for, to merge those two organizations and add a third component to it to dealing with advocacy and philanthropy. So I'm really excited about having this happen, and we want to roll this out before our next annual forum, which will be about this time next year. But the three kind of components in it are the development and land preservation, which is CCCLT's focus right now on real estate and on development, and partnering with developers like Nick and his company. Housing assistance and counsel, and that is the people aspects. That's the customers, the human services that help provides all those services that he his other organization is providing to support the housing. It isn't only about housing, it's about people as well. And I think we have a lot of pushback from neighborhoods going, well, that's all very well and good. The housing looks like market, but who's going to live there? And how are they good neighbors? Are they good behavior? And you know, the housing counseling, and I do this stuff I'm in this business, I do this stuff all over the eastern half of the U.S. Housing counseling and getting people prepared to occupy these units is so important from a budgetary standpoint, from a planning standpoint, just being good neighbors standpoint. So that is the aspect, the third prong. And the fourth prong, which Ray is very passionate about, is to go out and have advocacy, to go out in that community and fight NIMBYism, make people understand that this is not a social welfare problem. We're not building public housing, we're building housing for our workforce, and if we don't support our workforce, we don't allow them to live here, we're going to lose our market share in the industries that are supporting and keeping this community as robust and as beautiful as it is. And philanthropy. We need money to do this, okay? And we need to build a credibility. I better not walk too close to there. Get me. We need to build a credibility as an organization and the performance, the levels of performance that donors, wealthy donors, feel comfortable putting their money into social investment, that we will spend it wisely and we will have effectiveness. So that's a big agenda in the next 12 months. And, you know, I think Michael and Ray and I and the board have rolled up their sleeves and said, we're going to do this. So I want to stand here next year and say, we did it, here's where we're going, and I would like to have 3 times as many people in this room. So again, thank you for coming, and please get involved with what we're doing here. It's very important. I want to mention one other thing though. We are, this retooling that we're doing here, I want to give a shout out to the Community Foundation. They have been really good counsel to us and guidance. They've given us the name of a good consultant to help us restructure and put this structure together. So Laura's here from Community Foundation, and Eileen, I want to thank you both for the good guidance and you know, just hard note, this is what you should be doing, guys. We probably saved us 6 months or a year of false starts to get there. So I just wanted to give a shout out to you folks. Thank you. Okay, thanks for coming, and we're open for questions.
We are. Okay. So do we have any other questions that we weren't able to address or any conversation? Actually, you know, let me grab WT's question, but then I want to also, we're going to have announcements. Sorry. Got one more slide. Because lo and behold, we're not the only organization that's dealing with housing affordability topics in the community. So I'm going to give Jennifer a chance to introduce a great forum that GNL is going to be putting, Greater Naples Leadership is going to be putting on in January. No problem.
So I know there's probably a lot of real estate professionals in the audience right now that are very familiar with how a ground lease model would work, but could you maybe in a little more detail describe how that creates affordability for a housing development?
Absolutely. Well, and there's 2 ways. As we mentioned up there, you've got, if you're doing home ownership, you're going to have a, go see, okay, perfect, thank you. And Jennifer's going to talk next. But if you're doing home ownership, that ground lease is going to be with the homeowner. Very minimal amount of a ground lease fee. I think we've set ours at $25 per month to maintain. Again, that's just for admin. So they're paying very, very minimal amount. But when you're selling that housing unit, you're reducing the value of the land out of that. So you're getting your appraisal. The cost of the land is not picked up by the homeowner because, again, the land trust is retaining the ownership. So you get to remove that cost, and then we're also going to be seeking resources from the county has SHIP allocation for down payment assistance. The state's really wanting to set aside dollars for community land trusts. They really like the model. So we think there'll be an opportunity to partner, to pair reduction of the land value and also down payment assistance to really make it an affordable purchase. Now again, this is an alternative to renting. I want to stress, it is not a fee simple purchase. There is going to be a resale formula, so the individual is capped as to what they can resell it for, so that it always retains its affordability in perpetuity. And that's the initiative. Now on the development side, and I'll definitely get to you, Mike, on multifamily, you're going to have, if the land is acquired through the land trust, we're going to go out and again do a very nominal, there's a template about what an annual ground lease fee would be from that developer, but again, they're removing the cost, the majority of the cost of the land from the development, so obviously that makes it much more affordable. Our land costs are quite high, so when you can reduce that from the transaction, it's like a subsidy, it's like a local contribution that helps with GAP to make a project retain its affordability. And if the land trust is going to own the land and have that permanent ground lease, again, it's going to be, or that long-term renewable ground lease, we're going to retain permanent affordability through that model. So I hope that answers the question. Perfect. I get it. Let me just give Jennifer real quick. I wanted to give her an opportunity to discuss the Greater Naples Leadership Forum coming up next month.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'll pass the mic along to the next question after I'm done. On January 11th at 3 o'clock to 5:30 at the NCH Telford Center, Greater Naples Leadership, I think my badge is bothering this, Greater Naples Leadership is sponsoring a workforce housing forum. And this is a focus on the workforce that we are having trouble getting in Collier County because they can't afford to live here. 7 major employers are speaking. Some employees will speak about the problems they're having. And the major employers include the Sheriff's Office, the school system. It's also Arthrex, Wynn's companies, Michael Wynn, Tony Ridgway, Dan Lavender from Maureen's Park. Our co-sponsors are the League of Women Voters and NCH and Community Foundation, and we appreciate their help on getting the word out. Everybody's invited, it's free. You do need to register to come. Actually, you could walk in, no one's going to turn you away. But it is, to register, go to www.gnlwebsite.org. And if you have any questions, you can talk to me afterward.
Thank you. Pass it over to Michelle.
So the land trust is tax-exempt entity.
Correct.
There's substantial value in the land. There are real estate taxes associated with things that are provided to the community, schools and the like. How do the real estate taxes fall into this equation?
Are we talking about for purchaser? They would still, I mean, it's
For both.
Yeah, there's
For the rental market, if you're a landlord and you own the land and you own the building and you are assessed your real estate taxes for the community services that are provided, it's based upon the fair market value.
correct.
So in either case, there's real estate taxes, and I'm curious about how that's handled.
There are, and there's been models throughout the state, so you certainly are still going to, they're never going to be waived, so you're going to pay your property taxes. But as a homeowner that's purchasing into the land trust, they do have a model. They're going to have that based on just the value of their housing unit and not on the land. So there is some exemption potentially for those buyers. So there's models, we have to obviously communicate with our county. That's something that we have to definitely address to make sure everybody's, the property tax collector's office, to make sure we're all on the same page. But there's some Florida statute that allows for that reduced value for at least the homeowners on how they pay their property taxes. And on the multifamily side of it, the taxes are going to need to be paid. I think Nick can address that a little bit.
If it's a family development where there's no age restriction, you do have to pay taxes. It's on a per unit basis. That's how you'll be assessed. And then if it's for a senior product, 62 and over, you're by law, you're given tax exemption. So you are tax exempt for all units that are age restricted on the property.
So, yeah.
Have you addressed impact fees?
Only that there's a, as Nick addressed impact fees. No,
That's a popular topic. So right now we have 2 projects that are looking at about almost $1 million in impact fees. They are, 2 of them are senior products, so we are not forced to pay school impact fees. Those don't apply to senior developments, but for family developments, it's a little bit higher. I'd say it's probably close to $1.5 million in impact fees. We're trying to work with the state on figuring out mechanisms to waive those fees or defer them for a certain amount of time to get us to be able to afford those fees economically. It's still in the works. We're still having discussions with commissioners and folks that can help us, figure out a way to create some kind of mechanism to allow us to maybe make those payments later down the line once we've paid off a certain amount of debt that we have on the property, et cetera. So we're still working on that, but it would be great to have a way to address that issue.
You want to put your AHAC hat on for a second and talk? I can tell you that at the Affordable Housing Advisory,
Do you know if Lennar had made any progress on doing that with what they just announced?
I honestly have no idea. I don't. You're talking about their apartment complex, 400 units, is that?
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too far into county programs because I don't want to misspeak on something, but I believe the way that the county works right now, we have a 10-year deferral program. And so it doesn't always partner up very well with a low-income housing tax credit deal because you have an investor in that wants to see that some sort of a guarantee that those impact fees aren't going to come due before the 15 to 18 years that they're going to be in the transaction. So we're looking to figure out a way. You can come back, as a developer, I believe they can come in and reapply for an extension of the deferral program, but unless an investor sees a guarantee that, hey, that's not going to hit at some point, it's going to happen within 10 years and they're in the deal for 15 to 18, they're going to say put it in escrow up front. So the developer's still on the hook to make that investment.
And that's, from an AHAC standpoint, that's something that we've been harping on,
Correct.
that you need to align, whether it's a waiver or whether it's postponement, you need to align it with the funding sources and the requirements from the state, or else it's not a benefit. It's a false benefit.
Correct. The main issue is, when you lever up the permanent debt to operate the property, you've got about 15 years to pay off that debt. And the issue is investors see the impact fees coming in after 10 years. It's a high risk for them. You have to have that balloon payment at the end of 10 years. We're trying to extend it so we can pay off all our debt first, make our investors happy, and then move forward on the impact fees. The property should generate enough income to be able to satisfy those payments.
Oh, hello.
First of all, thank you for presenting. It's very interesting information. My question is, how do you work with the BCC? Do all your projects have to go through and be approved? And what's the accountability with that?
Absolutely. Any project that you're going to start through the gamut, and the Planning Commission, I believe they like to go and have things looked at through the DSAC, which is the Developed Servicers Advisory Committee. So, you're going to have to get through all that. And one of the things that Nick mentioned is nobody's trying to short circuit the process, but we're trying to create more certainty in the process. If a developer is going to come into the community and put in pre-development costs, and it's going to have to go through 5 or 6 layers, there's a time that really it takes. So if there's any way that we can help create policy that adds more certainty for the development community that's coming in to do these affordable projects, it's going to be a huge benefit to the community, because it does. Absolutely, everything right now is going to, if there's a zoning requirement change, we talked about, and nobody's recommending that we look at anything necessarily by right. Any land can be automatically converted to multifamily. But on that House Bill 1339, what's unique is that the commissioners would have an opportunity to say, as a one-off project, somebody brings something forward and says, we'd like you to review this. You have the authority to make that conversion without going through the entire process. You can look at this and say, hey, this site makes sense. We can negotiate terms on the development agreement, and this can be a great benefit for the community, but we want to get this started now. Because we need units not necessarily in 3 years. And that's the process right now. So absolutely everything right now is subject to that continuous review. Sorry. Hey, Ray.
Hi, Michael. I just wanted to add a couple of comments to Stephen's thoughts about the creation of the vision for a new organization, a growing organization. I've had the opportunity in my past career, to work in the private sector and the public sector on affordable housing. So this is what has motivated me. And what I've seen in my work in a number of places around the country is that communities that want to do something about affordable housing need to have a private, independent, nonprofit leadership organization that has capacity to make things happen. And we're fortunate here in Collier in the sense that we have the building blocks for that in the Community Land Trust and HELP. But to me, the need is to grow and evolve it into something even more substantial. like an Action Housing in Pittsburgh, or an Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership, or a Common Bond in Minneapolis, St. Paul. These are just examples. There are hundreds of examples of organizations like this. So what's really exciting to me is that we're working on this vision. We have an opportunity right now to, in the next 3 or 4 months, to develop a business plan for the organization and then begin to see whether there's support in the community for it. But if we're going to meaningfully address this problem in Collier County over time, we're going to need to have an organization that plays the same role that the David Lawrence Center plays with respect to mental health, or St. Matthew's House plays with respect to the services that they provide for the homeless and other issues. You need that kind of a leadership entity in the civic area, and that's the vision I think we're trying to achieve. So I just wanted to add those thoughts as to give you even a clearer picture of where we're trying to get to. Thank you.
Michelle's hustling.
Hi. One of the things I haven't heard in this discussion is anything about decentralizing the development of affordable housing. I have a personal concern about the fact that everything we're talking about seems to be centered in the area of 951 and 41. It's Collier Boulevard and the trail, rather than throughout the county. And is that something that the land trust will take as a principal thing in what they're doing, is to assure the fact that we don't end up with an area of homes that are all centralized and in the affordable range with a higher crime rate and all the other things that go along with it, rather than spreading that out throughout the county and probably mitigating a great deal of the problems.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to respond to that one. I totally agree with you. As I said, I do a lot of work in community revitalization around the country. One of the things we constantly try to do is deconcentrate lower income housing, multifamily housing, and do what term I use is that mixed income tiering of housing in a neighborhood. You got two issues that you have to deal with in Collier County to make that really happen. One is your land costs. Your land costs are the places in the city and in the county where the land costs are so prohibitive that you can't consider it. I'll give you an example. We're looking at a piece of property just outside the city limits, hit by the flood, has 6 units that can go on it, but when we run the numbers on it, the cost is $200,000 a unit for the dirt. You're not going to be able to make that happen without some deep subsidy, and you don't have the political will to make that kind of deep subsidy to do that. That's number one. Number two is you have a lot of high-end gated communities that will come out of the woodwork with the NIMBY factor, and they will protest virtually anything you do. So that's I think the advocacy point that Ray is pointing is there's an educational aspect in this community, and people have to understand, if you want to have your golf course nice and manicured, and you want to go to the club and have good service in the club, you have to have some affordable housing down the street from you, or those people aren't going to be there. So I think those are the two factors we've got to deal with if we want to spread this housing out a little bit.
And just one more point, we have had some conversations with developers that are looking at doing more mixed income, adding some income restrictions in multifamily communities that are definitely in the northern part of the county. So there's interest, but you have to make the numbers work. And the other aspect that we really are interested in is try to we talked about the human component and making sure that we're working with tenants so that, some of the things you mentioned, I don't think that the numbers always support that. If you have a well-designed, well-developed community that has affordability, has income restrictions, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be crime-ridden and some of those things that people associate with it. We want to try to knock some of those stigmas out by making sure that the communities that we are involved with don't end up going that route, I guess, if you will. So the more credibility you can add by having well thought out, well planned, and well run communities that are truly for workforce. and are truly for seniors. We don't anticipate having any high crime rate in the Allegro and Cadenza phase.
I also want to mention one more thing. When we do the lease-up process and we gather these applications, we do background checks on the tenants who are applying. So we do look into those factors. We try to minimize that risk as much as possible. It's required by law. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, we don't want to have communities that are going to raise a bunch of issues. And I think that point about the mixed income, you know, having these income average properties, you can even go up to market rate if you want to. You know, you don't necessarily have to keep it affordable at maxed out at 80%. You could do market rate units as well if the economics support it. So we do have a lot of flexibility. It does help mitigate that risk. And a lot of these communities have lowered their crime rates. It's not what it used to be, you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago when their other properties would come into play. So.
All right.
Hi. Danielle Hudson.
That's a hot one.
You gotta move.
I'm gonna move that way. Danielle Hudson, Vice President of Public Policy at Naples. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's been wonderful. I have more of a comment and maybe a question, but one of the things that our industry in particular has been taking a look at over the past several years, but more intensely in the past year, is the missing middle housing. So particularly in an area like ours, where we have lots of gated communities and PUD style neighborhoods, there seems to be a real lack of the duplexes, triplexes, you know, stacked triplex sort of model. So I wanted to just comment that I was really encouraged by your comments in pertaining not only to rental stock, but also to home ownership, because it sounds like there might be some parity in what we're seeing as a real need in the community and what you all are thinking as you're going out into the community and taking a look at some plots of land where some of these sort of missing middle developments might be more plausible. And in particular, I'm interested to see if there's any headway that can be made in the city. They have had some really wonderful discussions from the Community Bright Trust, where they've discussed some of these missing middle type developments that may be more plausible to be built in the city, particularly if we take a look at maybe some of the more rundown hotels that might be there, or even some land possibilities now post-Ian if people are looking to sell their property. So anyway, thank you for everything that you're doing, and I just wanted to bring that up as something that we're certainly taking a look at and maybe could partner with you all on as well.
Absolutely. And I don't want to put her on the spot, but I'm going to give a shout out, Marcel, too. We've had some really good conversations. I think everybody knows that our Habitat for Humanity office here in Collier County is the strongest in the country. I mean, they've been recognized, and they do a tremendous job of working with, and they've continued to try to broaden the spectrum of maybe pushing some of the limits of what they can do as far as helping some higher income individuals as we get more towards workforce. And we've had many conversations. I really am excited about the opportunities that we might have to collaborate because they're such a strong organization focused on home ownership. How, as using our land trust model, can we collaborate to even bring in a wider income spectrum, maybe up to the moderate income range? So we are having those conversations. So we'll continue to do that. Somebody, where'd the microphone go? Okay, Laura.
I have it. I just wanted to add to your remarks in responding to this gentleman's concerns about the density of the affordable housing communities off the Collier Boulevard area. And just note that, you know, I think that we all have work to do in talking to the community, because I think that the public in general associates affordable housing, quote unquote, with crime, with low-income people, with people who are unemployed. And all of these communities are either for seniors or for people who are employed.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you all, but every time I go out to dinner, I ask my server, where do you live? When I shop in a retail store, where do you live? And so many people are driving in. And so these housing projects, as we've noted over and over, are for our service workers, but they're also going to be for our essential employees. They're going to be for our law enforcement, our teachers, our medical staffing, our people who work at our hotels that we really depend upon for our economy. These people are earning well below the median income. And so they're gainfully employed. They're not criminals. And I think it's just a matter of, as we're in the community and as we're advocating for affordable housing, to think really carefully about the language that we're choosing and explaining, who the residents of these communities are going to be. And these are not large groups of unemployed people. And they aren't even necessarily the working poor. They're people who are working, who are contributors to our community, who cannot afford to live here. And there may be people in this room who fall into that category. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
I always say that if I hadn't bought a house back in 2004, I don't know if I'd be able to live here. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So, and I hate to cut this off. We're getting close to the 11:30 hour, but I'm going to take probably 2 more questions because we do have a bit of a time certain where we're going to have to conduct our annual meeting. So I apologize for that. But go ahead, Mike.
You mentioned habitat. If people have not gone and actually seen what they look like, I would encourage you to go over to Whitaker.
Yeah.
It's a project basically across the street from Youth Haven, and it is north of Rattlesnake Hammock, and it is it's west off of Davis, off of Santa Barbara, right. Drive in there and take a peek at what they're doing. Now, this is like really where the rubber meets the road, affordable housing. All of these people put in sweat equity. All of these people are in the same socioeconomic status. All of these people want their home to continue to look very nice. And they're all over their neighbors, and their kids are well behaved, and it's a nice community, and it's still being developed. But if you want to peek at what it could look like, I think that really throws water in the face of the not in my backyard people.
I just wanted to add to that, Amanda Pearson work at the Chamber, and of course, for the last 10 years that I've been there, and much more than that, affordable housing, workforce housing has been top priority in a crisis. So, years ago, we were talking about making sure that the community does a better job of education and changing the face of what is workforce housing or affordable housing. I don't know how many years ago it was that I had one opportunity to speak to commissioners and look at the audience and tell them that I am workforce housing and what's wrong with me. And that really shook them, and that was wild to me. But nonetheless, I think that whether we're doing these kinds of presentations or, if you're Habitat, what Habitat does a wonderful job of is anytime they're working with a group, they bring a resident out. And my husband and I were just there on Saturday, and the resident is a chef, not a criminal. So I think that making sure that no matter what we're doing, that piece of what the face is a huge part, because that is a huge obstacle. And making sure that everybody is a really good advocate of that, and maybe that there's always a slide on the data of a lot of things that we're talking about, including crime rates, and it can be easily found on websites so that we can start to break the myth of all this.
Very good input, thank you. We'll grab one more over here, Michelle.
I'm sorry to do this, but it is a fact. Along with where you talked about off Whitaker, another place to go look at is actually behind where they're going to put the Home Depot in, which is on the East Trail, and it's across from the horses, basically. There's a little street that goes back into a Habitat for Homes community. That's one that's been lived in for a while, and it gives you a better idea of what happens down the road, 20 years down the road, in a community like that. And people have to live someplace. And a really good example is Naples Manor, which is in that area, which has turned around from homes that were in the $70,000 range 10 years ago to now they're about $400,000. And they're being upgraded and all kinds of things. But we have to be careful in terms of the concentration, in my mind, of homes of the same ilk, because if we get too close together, they're not going to have a reason to really upgrade, and will look more like Lehigh Acres than Naples.
Thank you. Okay, great conversation. We always appreciate all input from the community. And I hate to cut it short because I could talk about this stuff all day. But we do have to convene a very, very brief annual meeting for anybody who is a paid regular member of the organization. Please stick around for that. We're going to go just very quickly through election of new board members and some existing board members, and our amendments, our amended and restated bylaws need to be ratified. So anybody else, thank you so much for coming today. We appreciate your attendance.